Howdy, folks. Today I wanted to take a look at a project I've been thinking about doing for some time. This is going to be a little bit of a resources site because I have a lot of resources that I've found throughout my times, and people ask for them. Hey, how do I do X? How do I do Y? And I'm always like, I know I ran into that at some point. Let me see if I can find it. Shoot me a DM. I'll try to get to it. And it's not very helpful a lot of times, especially because I've forgotten most of the time what I'm doing. So the goal here is to make a simple site that lets me categorize and upload resources for people to use, so that they can check stuff out and also that I can find stuff if I need to. So for starters, I've set up a basic template. This is when I'm building React applications. This is kind of the template I use. It's pretty much got everything set up in it to start off with. So you've got your server, your backend, very simple backend, and then you've got the front end here, which is just a very simple index and an app that has some API call, right? And then I've actually got like a simple little method of doing APIs. It uses fetch, but it's just kind of a nicer way of doing fetch, so I don't have to worry about different stuff, and also a URL handler. I should change this to use the like a proxy. I haven't done it yet. This is using Vite. This is not using Webpack. So Vite is something that I use. It's a little. I find it's just a little bit faster than Webpack, and sometimes I miss the complicated stuff, but not usually. So I've got this running the backend here with NodeMon, and I've got it running the front end with Vite. So let me see here. I'll pull this over. All right, so we're going to go localhost 8080. There we go. Welcome to unblockME resources. So this will be a good place to start from. So I want to have a couple of database things in here, but for starters, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to build out some routes. Okay, so my route right now, whoops, this is here. My route right now is all here, right? I want to use modular routing, so we're going to add routes. I am not going to use a strict MVC flow here. I'm calling this routes instead of controllers. That's just because that's kind of how I operate. Not too worried about that. I will you have models, but my views, obviously, there's a whole front end directory for views, so I'm not doing something similar. This is a little closer to a MERN stack, except I'm not going to be using Mongo. I am using MySQL. So I guess a MERN stack could use MySQL as well, because they both start with M. All right, so let's see here. We've got our server. Oh, routes should actually be inside the server. Okay, we'll go in here, and our index.js. Router equals. Actually, I'm going to do this. Equal. There we go. Rest took me a minute. All right, so now equals new router module to exports equals router. Okay, so here's our routes, and we're going to hook those up in the server. Okay, we're going to say routes equals require routes. And let's just put this in here, app.use/routes. Hook that up. I'm going to get rid of my ping route because I'm not actually going to use that anymore. So what do we need? Well, let's do API. Technically, everything in here is an API because this is a React app. It's a single page app. It doesn't have handlebars it's running, but just to follow the conventions. Another index, okay, and actually this is going to be very similar. So I'm just going to pop it in there. And then now that I've got my API index, I'm going to import it, okay? API routes equals require API router.use, not user, API routes. There we go. And so now I got my API routes in here. Well, what are a couple APIs we have? Well, the first one, let's say, let's just show the list of resources, right? So we want a resources. I'm actually going to copy pretty much the same thing into here. But now I'm actually going to create real routes. Router.get, and this is the get slash, which is just basically get all the resources. For now, I'm just going to return a simple list. Okay, so I'm going to say res.json. Let's make it an array. And so in our objects, we're going to have maybe a title, resource 1, description, some resource, link. It's a great link. I always use this link for testing. And then some tags, right? And now let's say tag 1, 2. And notice while I'm building this out, I'm kind of just thinking to myself, like, what kind of data am I probably going to need? This will probably change over time. But for now, I just want to have this very, very simple data. Because the thing about back and front end is as long as you agree on the contract, as long as you agree what the data is going to look like across the two, it doesn't really actually matter where that data is coming from. Like right now on the front end doesn't care. This is just a simple array. Back end doesn't care what the front end is doing with the data. It doesn't matter. So you want to start simple like this. Okay, and then let's go in here and we're going to add resources routes, wire, resources router dot use resource. So there's some debate, should use resources or resource. I think it's kind of up to you. I've seen both. Really technically you want a singular because it's supposed to, in REST, it's supposed to refer to the actual object that you're dealing with. Doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so now we have API resources, and we can just get a list of resources. Let's go to our front end. And now, well, let's make sure our back end actually, yeah, it's still running. It's all good. Okay, so I'm actually going to grab my resources as a state here. Again, starting very simply. App is probably not the final resting place for these. I'm probably going to want some sort of React router set up, something more complicated, but we're just going to start simple. So resources, set resources equals use state. And we start it with an empty array. The reason we start it with an empty array is because I'm going to be looping over them and I don't want to have to do null checks. Use effect. We already have call API, so instead of ping, I'm going to get API resources. Okay. And let me actually just go here, open up my console, and I'm going to double check and make sure. Okay, result from ping is null. 404, oh, you know what? I don't know if you can see it in there. I have a double slash in there. So I've actually set up my API thing here. It adds the slash. I don't really like that, honestly, but I know some of my code uses it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say if API starts 0 is not a slash, API equals slash plus API. Basically prepend the slash if it doesn't exist. That means that gives me the option. If I remember it like this, just because it looks nicer, it still works. If I forget it, it's still going to work. Okay, result from ping. There we go. Now we've got our data. This tells me something valuable. This tells me a lot of the code I just wrote worked, right? This is why you want to do this stuff very quickly. And in fact, at this point, I almost want to go in here and say adding first routes. Commit that. And that's kind of important because now I know that much worked, right? I can make API calls. All that code setup is good, which I kind of figured it would be, but you never know. So now instead of that result from ping, which is that array, we're actually just going to say set resources result. Now in here, okay, let's set this as a header, just so it's kind of a little nicer. And then I want to put a div here. And I want to loop over my resources. Why did I put a div? Just in case. It's good to have structural stuff. It should probably actually be a section, to be honest. Section. I'm not styling this right now. Resources.map. Resource. And then let's see. What do I want this to look like? I kind of want to have title with the link and then description below. So turn, and we're gonna, I be honest, I just like divs. So I do divs for everything. Resource.link, resource.title, and then below this, the div, because why not? Resource.description. Let's just take a look at that. Okay, resource one, some resource. That's not too bad. We'll get into tags a little later. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger. So resource one, some resource. When I click on this, the problem is it leaves my page. So let's change that. Target equals underscore blank. What that does, so when I click it, it's going to open a new tab. Very useful. Okay, resource one, some resource. What I want then is I actually want to add a couple more resources just to make sure that that works. Because see, I verified that this works. So let's change one thing. Okay. Resources. And then we'll just return resources. Okay. Now we check it again. Still works. Let's commit it. First render of resources. Now I'm just going to add a bunch more. I'm just going to duplicate. Totally fine to duplicate. And if I reload this, now I've got a bunch more resources to show up because I want to see what this scroll does. Right, that's kind of important in a lot of cases. You always want to see the scroll. Okay, so now that we've got these resources, these are clickable, great. It might be useful to be able to search for them by tag. Right, that just seems like a thing we might want to do because honestly, if I have a list of 100 of these resources, I don't want someone to have to scroll through the whole damn thing. So we've got our tags, but let's make a route for that, right? So what we could do is we could actually go in here and we could do this on the front end because the front end knows about these tags. But that's resource intensive on the client. And especially if let's say I have 1,000 resources, I'd have to download 1,000 resources into the client app. And then I'd have to search through them, right? That's not the best situation for the user. And like the user doesn't want to have to do with that. They want to get their data a lot quicker. And one way we can get them that data quicker is by building an API that does the searching for us, because we can actually make it use of SQL in the future. So I'm going to say router.get tag. Okay. Let's just say tags. And there's a couple ways we could do this. One, we could just say tag, right? If I want to search by a resource with a certain tag. This is the architecture part of this we got to figure out. But what if I want to search for multiple tags? Because I may want to search for things that have 3 tags or things that have any of 3 tags, right? So that's a little more complicated. And what I'm going to do with that is we're just going to put this in here. Now, it is possible. There is a way to set up a system such that you pass a key or parameter to get multiple times. And so what that kind of looks like is if you go in here, you say something like that. And if you put the little brackets on it, depending on your web server might be smart enough to figure out how to do that. I don't know if how Node handles that, or if Express handles that appropriately. So what I want to do then is I want to see, what did I set up here? Get, okay. Oh, so I just stringified them. Okay, so I'm just stringifying objects, which is totally fine. So what we're going to do then is we're going to say, okay, tag string equals request dot. Ooh, I want to say, I think, because I always get confused between query and param. I want to say it's query dot tags, okay? And equals rec dot query, oops, JSON dot parse tag string. Now let's actually check this out. Let's just console log tags at this point and Just return. Why? Because I want to test this. I don't know 100% of this is going to work. I want to test it, so I'm going to test it. So what I want in here is I'm actually going to copy this. I don't want to set up the front end for this yet. I'm going to set here, and I'm going to put in tags, tag 1, tag 2. Very simple test. It's going to happen when I load the page. Wow, it just really churns on that. Oh, you know what? There's also a problem with the use effect here. This needs that. Didn't realize that was happening. Goodness. All right, so that gives me a 404 not found. API resources tags. Oh, because I called it tag. Let's put that in there, tags. Okay, unexpected end of JSON input, that's totally fine. That's because I'm not returning JSON out of here. What I'm more interested in is what did the backend do? Looks like it worked. Very cool. So to start off, I'm going to assume these tags are kind of simple. This is a OR. So if it has tag A or tag B. So let's do this. Filtered resources equals resources.filter. Source. Making use of that array method. If resource.tags.includes. Well, basically, we actually want to get the union of this, don't we? Because we have tags here. And you know what? To make this a little bit better, because all of these have tag 1, tag 2, and tag 3. I'm going to take some of these that don't have tag 2, and I'm actually going to rename them. We're at the point where we need to actually check. Maybe I'll just get rid of all these, actually. I need to actually be able to distinguish these, so I'm going to rename them a little bit and change their tags. That should work. Okay. So I've got my tags. I've got my other tags. Let's see. Is there a good way to union in JavaScript? Okay. Simple way to deal with merging, blah, 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 blah. Okay. This is nice. So the following cryptic one-liner, ain't that the truth? All right. I'm going to pop this in there. And let's see. So let me explain to you what this does. Resource.tags and tags. So what this is doing is this is basically creating one giant array containing all the tags in the resource and all the tags that I just got out of my JSON. One array, right? So if I was doing resource 1, it would be tag 1, tag 2, tag 3. And this is actually not the union. I want the intersection, but I'll explain to what this does first. And then I got my tags that come in, which is tag 1, tag 2. Cool. 5 entries. Then if you put it into a set, that deduplicates it. So the set will actually deduplicate and only give you the unique ones, which is technically the union. Then it spreads it into a new array, so then you get an array of the deduped tags. That's not actually what I want because I'm realizing I asked the wrong question. What I want the intersection. Union is the two arrays smushed together and deduped. Intersection is indicating what piece of them. Well, I guess I could show you actually. Let me just show you what this does. Yeah, give me a new one. Perfect. So let's say I have here and I have here. Okay. If this one is array 1 and this one is array 2, the union between these two tags is essentially this. Everything in array 1, everything in array 2, except the duplicates are kind of deduped, but it still looks normal. The intersection is this chunk right here. I want the parts that intersect. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing here. So, array intersection. Here we go. Someone's come up with a nice one. Okay, array filter includes. Cool. Love when we can just grab code. So, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to just pop this in there. array1 resource.tags, and this is tags. And then, because you should always, it's just nice to cite your sources, especially if you're in Stack Overflow. You come down here to share. I just copy that link and then pop it in here, because that just kind of indicates like this is where I got this from, right? This is a thing. I did this. I got this. This is where it came from. So now, if our filtered array, if that has anything in it, it means there's some intersection between those tags. Actually, so then I can just actually return filtered array that length is above 0. Because I'm filtering here. This is actually kind of an expensive operation to do. So you don't want to do this all the friggin' time. But it's not a bad thing if you're doing it just for testing, especially on a small data set. Now I'm going to return, I'm going to send JSON filtered resources. Save that, come back here. When we reload, now we get resource 1 and resource 2 because they both have tag 1. If I was only searching for tag 2, then I only get 1 entry, which is resource 1. So that seems to work. All right, so what I want to do then is I'm actually going to take this call out, okay? And I'm going to take this call out, but I'm not going to do anything. Instead, I'm going to say, okay, let's have a text field, okay? And we're going to put another div, because why not? We love divs around here. And then we're going to say, okay, input type equals text, value equals, we'll get to that in a second, on change, oops. We'll also get to that in a second. And then we want to put, oops, a little bit of texture, put a label, tags. Okay. Now, because it's a text field and this is React, I need to have some way of storing that value. So I'm just going to say temp tags use state empty string. This is going to be temp tags. And on change, this is just going to be a simple handler. Set, this is actually why they did this, set temp tags e.target.value. Okay, so now I can go here, and I've got tags, tag 1. All right. So maybe I want to do the search, right? As soon as I stop typing. So there's 2 ways we can do that. One, oops. We can actually handle it in the onChange. So we can have whenever set temp tags changes, and we can do that with the use effect, we search. It's not a great way to handle things necessarily. What we want is we want to wait till the user stops typing for a slight period of time. Then we want to search. So we want to do a debounce. The way we do that, I am actually going to have something on temp tags here. Oops. So when I do this, I'm going to set a timeout. Okay. And in that timeout, I'm actually going to call the API. And I'm going to set that for 2 seconds. Call API, get resources tags. The tags is actually going to be temp tags dot split on a comma. Right? So then I can comma separate my tags I want to search for. This 2000 means it's going to wait 2 seconds after I stop typing to load. Seems okay. Might need to tweak that a little bit. But I also need to hold a state for that. Okay. And I'm going to say timeout. Oh god, I don't want to call that set timeout. What do I call that? I'm just going to call ittout. Use state null. Now I'm going to say if tout, oops, cancel timeout. I think it's cancel timeout. Oh, it's clear timeout, I think. Clear timeout, tout. And then this is going to be here, and we're going to set timeout, oops, set tout, timeout. Why do we do that? Well, this is a simple debounce. So the reason we do this is if we come in here and we have a timeout, we clear it. Then we set a new one for 2 seconds. So as the user is typing, this timeout is continuously getting set and cleared and set and cleared until they stop typing. Then it's finally allowed to go through. So let's check this out. If I watch my network here, see, it's not doing anything yet. But if I say tag 1 and hold for 2 seconds, then you can see it goes through. And I get my data. Typing, tag 2, I hold, and then it goes through. That's the debounce. That's the whole point of a debounce. It's not going to go through until I stop typing for a certain amount of time. This is, there's 2 types of debounces. This is one of them. The other debounce is kind of the other direction, where you don't, you're kind of not paying attention to when the user's doing input, but you're still kind of waiting. It's like a post versus pre-debounce. And as you can tell, I'm not super familiar with the other one. I know this one though. Tout is not a good name, but you know, that's what happens when you come up with names. Okay, so instead of this, we're going to say set resources result. Okay, so now we come in here. There you go. So if I go tag 1, wait for a second, same thing, tag 3. Now I've got result resource 1 and resource 2, tag 2, and it's just that resource. I kind of want to lower this a little bit to 1,000. At some point, I kind of want to have a thing for putting in data. But for now, I look for a tag. I get some data on it. Pretty nice so far, right? Pretty slick. Be nice though. Well, actually, first of all, let's commit this. Okay, search by tags. Be nice if this wasn't coming from a static list here, because I'd like to be able to go to this and import my own stuff, right, and have people do their own things. So for that, I want a database. Now I'm not going to use SQLize for this because I'm not especially fond of it, to be honest. So what I'm going to use is actually something I built. That's not right. Well, we'll take a look at this. This is npm-io database. Oh, you know what? This is npm-io. I want npm.js. There we go. There we go. So this is the ORM that I use in particular because it's simple. So I'm going to go in here. We're going to say, okay, install database. All right, that's installed. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to actually make another thing for models. All right. Now, inside here is, let's see, let's actually make our connection as well. Connection.js. So in here, we're going to const connection equals require, and then equals connection dot, I think it's this one. Let me just see. Set up a connection, etc., etc. Pretty sure this exports connection. There it does. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a file connection because that's a really simple thing to make, and I can switch it over to a SQL connection very easily. And then I'm actually going to say, okay, path dot resolve this directory 1 up, 2 up, because this will put us in here, data. Okay, and then connection dot set default connection. So that's going to create the connection, or rather it's going to create it as a data directory and then just put JSON files in there, which is totally fine for now because the interface is the same. I don't want to set up a whole MySQL thing yet. Then all I have to do is import it. You can see it already went and created that data directory as soon as the server restarted. I'm going to put that in my git ignore just so that I don't have that. And now let's do our models. So first model I want is the actual resource. Let's import model from, okay, resource model equals model dot. Let me look up here. This is why you write documentation even for your own stuff. It's very useful. Model, oh, it's new model, okay. So I use that. New model. And the first thing is the table, resource, fields, and the version, which I'm going to give it version 1. Fields, the ID field we get by default. And so we have like this. So what do we want for our resource? Well, first, we need our title, right? And I think I actually need to pull in data types from here. Oops. Data types dot string. Meta is going to be, oh, it's field type and field meta. Okay. Type. See, it shows up. You should always, if something's wrong, you should always trust that or take a look at it, right? If you're typing something into these and it's not showing up, that's an indicator that something might be missing out of the system. And I'm going to make this a what is this, field meta dot required? I think it's required. Yeah, it's not an auto field. It's fine. Description's actually going to be the same thing. And then, what was the other thing I had in here? Where's my API? Okay, title, description, link, and tags. So let's put our link, and then tags is actually going to be JSON type. So I can do that. Module parts equals resource model. Okay, so now inside here, just like Sequelize, I do need to have something to initialize. So I'm going to say resource model equals require resource function init. We're going to make this async. And I'm going to say await resource model dot init. You have to tell each table to initialize. Then we're going to export equals init resource model. Notice I capitalized this here, but it is not capitalized here. That's totally okay because it's a default export. I can rename it. It's not common, but in this case, I just wanted to do it. Now we go into our server, okay? Require models. And now, similar to Sequelize, so I'm going to say init.then. And I don't let my server start up until it's initialized. Let's make sure that didn't crash. It did crash. Can't use import statement outside of a module. That's entirely my fault. Because import statements like that are generally front end. All right, let's see what happened. Initialize table is not a function. That's a deeper one. So that could be two things. One, it could be the connection doesn't exist. Maybe I didn't set the default connection. Set default connection. No, it's fine. Could be also that, like, this is a newer version of this model. It could be that it actually has some issues. So let me take a look at that. All right, so I did figure out the issue. The main issue is that this here, this is meant to be a promise. So this is expected to return await. Node does not get super happy when you put awaits at the top level, which means I actually have to return this as its own function. And so what I can do in here is instead of pulling this in like that, I can put it in my models. And I can say, okay, connection equals, and then I can await init connection here before I do my models. And let's see, what is it saying? Cannot sign module config connection. Right, that's because it actually needs to go up a directory. There we go. And now if I look at my data, you see, it has now created the file for resource. again, if this was SQL, it would be creating a new table, but because this is a file, it's just there. But it'll be easy enough to swap over. Now I'm going to say, okay, starting with data models. All right. Now we have our data model. Let's actually set up our seeds. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, seed data. We're going to have an index.js in here. And then we're going to have our resources, sources.json. So there isn't really a drop table thing in this data system. So one of the things I want to do is I'm going to say, okay, resource, not there, resource model, acquire models. Nope, not that. Oh, this is in the wrong place. This needs to be inside the server. Models. Okay. So this is going to be a nice thing that JavaScript has. I need to run async stuff in here. I need to be able to await. This is an anonymous self-calling function. So if you're using a module, you can have await at the top level. That's a new thing they've added in the last couple of years. But you might not have access to that. That might not be a thing you can do. So what you can do instead is you can have this self-calling anonymous function that just gives you an asynchronous block that you can do stuff with. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to actually delete all my resources. But dot delete, this takes in an actual ID, which means wait, resource model dot search. I want to get all of them first. Resources, and then just run through them and delete them. This is because I don't really have a drop tables in this case. It's a file. I'm just going to delete everything there. Resource.id. Okay. Now I'm going to import my resource data, acquire, resources JSON, and we're just going to loop through that as well. Resource of resource data, await, resource model dot insert resource. Let's go down here. Let's add this into our scripts. Seed node server seeds index.js. We're going to come here and run seed. Oh, end of oh yeah. So I went in here and I didn't actually put anything in there. That's not what we want. So let's go in here and let's wait, not here. Our API. And let's just take all this. Let's pop it into our resources. It's going to complain bitterly because it wants all these things to have quotes. And it's also trying to be very helpful to me, and I don't want it to be helpful. All right. Oh, and these, it wants these to be quotes too, but I can fix that a little later. Tags, description, link, tag, title, description, link, tags, title, description, link. I could have used a find replace on this, and I'm actually going to do it for this next one. I'm going to say all single quotes replaced with double quotes. And there we go. Get rid of the trailing commas because JSON does not like those. There we go. Run it again. Something else broke. Oh, no default connection set. Right. So, similar to what we're initializing our tables, we got to make sure that we initialize the tables in the seeds as well. So I have to await init. Okay. No such field tags. Model.js. Okay, so that is my resources. Oh, because I called it description again. All right, let's see. Okay, looks like it works. And if I just take a close look here, I can see it's auto-incremented to 4, and here is all my data. Notice these are actually stored as strings. They get de-JSONified as appropriate. So now we've got our database set up. So I'm going to save this. Seed data. See, we commit early, commit often. I can always go back if I need to. If I screw something up really badly, I can go back. Let's take our route, okay? And let's change this now. So this is going to go away. And we're going to take in our resources model. It's a resources model or resource model? Resource model. This model equals require. Let's see. So make sure everything's. My computer is getting hot. Up, 2 directories and models. So now when we get our resources, resource model dot search, and I'm going to put that in there. Here, this one becomes kind of interesting because there's not really a good way right now to do that raw SQL query because, of course, we're dealing with a file, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tag string, and I'm just going to still do the filtering here. It's not the most efficient thing. I would like to do it in the SQL, but it's just easier to not at the moment. Resources equals await, and I'm actually going to grab this same line because that's what I want. Take that, and let's make sure. Looks like it started up. And let's go here. Now, if I rerun this, there it is. Except now it's pulling from the database, the file database. Important thing though, now these APIs don't need to change. The only thing, if I want to go to MySQL, I just need to change where this connection is going, and everything should work appropriately. So, put in here, their routes. Next thing, okay, I want to be able to update and modify these things. So I want kind of a user thing. I want to be able to have users. So first of all, let's make a new database for that. Okay, user.js. And I'm actually going to copy a lot of this. Okay. And I'm going to call this a user model. Table is user. Username, it is required. Password, it is also required. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not setting up any permissions right now. That would be a more complicated thing. And then let's pull that in here. Require user. And we're going to await user model.init. And this actually would be better as a promise.all at this point, but it's not a super big deal right now. And that server's already gone, and we can see here's our user data. Very cool. Now let's go into my seed data. Let's make a users.json. Username, admin, password, change me. Nope, no trailing. This is, gotta remember that. User data, acquire, users.json. We're gonna pull in user model and just use kind of a similar thing as here. User of user data, user model. You can already see Sequelize would be helpful in some cases, like being able to drop everything, being able to multi-create, stuff like that. All right, let's test our seed data again. Okay, so now if I go, if I go in here, resources, it's giving me 4 more, or 3 more. It didn't reset the ID. That's okay. User, now I have a user. Now, this password isn't super great. I actually want to encrypt this with bcrypt. So let's actually do that in the seeds. So let's say, we'll just say user.password equals, and we got to install bcrypt now. Bcrypt. And with installing bcrypt, we also need to have our .env. Okay, so secret, because we need a bcrypt secret to be able to encrypt stuff. I'm pretty sure we do. If I'm wrong, I'll undo it or do something else. .env. Install in. Notice this .env is very top level. You could put it in server if you want, because it's kind of only going to be used in there, but it's fine to have it top level as well. We run it here. I'm running it the very first line I possibly can in my server, just in case. All right, now we come in here, and I'm going to say, wait, oh, I got to import bcrypt. Require bcrypt. Bcrypt dot hash. And this is asked for the data. Oh, and salt or rounds. Oh, I guess it doesn't need a... All right, I guess it doesn't need a secret. That works for me. Okay, so I just need the user.password, and I'm going to have it to 10 rounds. Rerun my seed data. Doesn't seem to have crashed. Now when I go here, that looks right. Oh, it's not dropping the user data either. So what I did here, I kind of want to do for the user as well. Users, this is going to be the user model. Users, user model, user. Okay. Run it again. Now I've only got that one with that password encrypted. Cool. Now let's set up some user routes. So I'm going to go down here to my routes. I want users.js const router equals, oh, actually this needs to be router equals require express new router module to exports equals router. Put in the index, user routes, require users router.use users user routes. All right, let's get our login in place. We don't need a create right now because I'm using the seed data. Router.post login request response. Now we got post. Let's double check just to make sure we have. We do not. We don't have our middleware. .use express.json. Let's get our JSON middleware in there for the body. Now, username, password equals rec.body. Let's import our user model. Where this goes up one, and we get it from models. Notice how, I want you guys to also notice how much of the tools in VS Code I'm using. I type something and I can kind of, if I see it's auto-correcting and it looks right, I just use it, right? It may take a little bit of time to get used to, but eventually it'll save you a lot of time, definitely. Okay, so first thing, potential user, wait, we're going to user model dot search, and we're going to search where the for the username. If, and I'm actually going to say this is plural because search returns an array. The length equals 0. Res dot status 401 dot send. Let's actually do JSON because all this stuff is expecting JSON. Error, no such user. And return. It's important to return, otherwise it's going to send the res and then it's just going to continue on. Cool, we got a user. User equals potential users 0. We should only ever have 1, but we'll always do the first. Now we got to compare against the password. Require bcrypt. That equals bcrypt dot compare, and we're going to await that. Why do await instead of compare sync? Well, because this is a server. The more opportunities we can give it to take breaks and jump threads, the better, because that'll just make it more efficient. If I'm saying spend all your time on this thread, it'll work, but it'll chug a little bit and it'll hold other threads hostage or requests, because remember, Express is single threaded. It only does one thing at a time. So when I do these awaits, it's able to go off and do other stuff. Now this particular one, because it's a file, it doesn't actually wait for anything, but that's not a big deal. Compare, all right, data and encrypted. So we're going to say password and user.password. If not password match, I'm just going to copy this here. 401, bad password. You could argue it's better security to have the same message for both so people don't know if they're getting a user. I'm not too worried about that for this site. We could always change it later. Otherwise, if it is a password match, okay, then we want to create our token. I'm going to use JWT for that. So, JSON web token, because I don't want to worry about Express sessions. So, we're going to import that. JWT equals require JSON web token. Token equals JWT dot sign. And it gives me an object, okay. So first I'm going to say, who's my user, okay. User.id. That's all I need for now. Again, if you're able to log in at all, it means you're an admin at this point, because I don't have any other levels, so I'm not too worried about that. I can always change those tokens later. Then I need the secret. You may get an error. If you don't put the secret in, you'll get errors when it starts up. And this is going to be JWT secret. And now I do need to go on my .env. Not a very secret thing, but this is for dev. I don't really care that much. Okay, login. So, commit. You see I got quite a lot of files. Login API. Let's see if it started. Oh, it crashed. Router.user. Every time I do this, every frickin' time it's use, not user. That started. It's just, you know, it's such a common pattern of things for me to type. So I always do it. So now let's set up our app to actually deal with that. And bam, 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 bam. Where is my app? It's in source. I had it closed. At this point, it's kind of getting to the point where we might want to have an actual router for this. So I'm going to create a views directory. Now views is meant to hold top level pages. That's kind of the idea with the views in a React app. It holds the high level pages and then components go in those. So I'm going to have main, or actually let's say home.js. And I'm actually going to take all of this and pop that into home. So let me just copy the whole thing. I'll just rename it home. Okay, and this actually, everything needs to go up a directory. I don't know if I'm actually doing styles. Oh yeah, so I don't want the app root. So I'm actually just gonna do this section as my top level here. Pull that in. Always indent your code properly. It's very important. Now I'm gonna go into app, and I'm actually going to get rid of all of this and this section. Instead, I'm gonna have home. Get rid of call API, get rid of the use state use effect. And let's just see, ooh, something doesn't like that. Ah, right, because Vite needs everything to be JSX if it has JSX in it, unfortunately. There we go, still in there, tag 1, still works. All right, that's fine. Now, let's set up React Router. Let me actually remember how to set up React Router. React Router. Cool. Where's my... Give me the quick start. Okay, fine. We'll look at the tutorial. Setup. That's what I want. All right. I don't want to do Vite. template React. Okay, adding the router. This is from React Router DOM. So let's load that. Oftentimes when you're getting a tutorial like this, you can figure out what you're doing just by getting down here. Like I can see, this is probably what I want. The create, this is in my main. So I'm going to go into my index, pop this in. Okay. And router, create browser router. I think, I don't think I want to do it this way, actually. I think I want to pop this into app. Because I want my actual router to be in app, you know? Then let's do this. Let's say, there is actually, okay, create browser router. But I feel like I don't need to create it. I feel like I can just put the browser router in there and then routes, right? That's a thing they have in here. And then I want the actual route. Yeah, let's get rid of the provider. The provider could be useful at some point, but route. Okay, so now equals slash, and then you can do this two ways. One, you can have it as a child, so I can say home, or you can add it. I'm pretty sure you can do this, or you can add it as a component. If this doesn't work, yeah, we'll do something else. Let's see what we get. Okay, it gave me an error. Home is not a route component. All component children. Okay, fine. So then what we want to do is we'll make this like that. And we'll say element equals home. There we go. Oh, now it's showing up twice. Why is it showing up twice? Because I think I still have it in my app. Yep, I still have it. Okay. Then let's make another view for login. And one of the things about Vite is you don't actually have to import React. I do it a lot of times just by habit, but you definitely don't have to do it. Okay, so let's see here. We're going to default function login, return div login. I'm going to leave that for now. Why? Because I don't actually care about the contents right now. I want to test to make sure I can load the component. Small tests like this, if you do them constantly, it helps you to avoid having huge breakages once you actually finally test the code. So I'm doing very little. This is a bare minimum. Almost like think of a million little MVPs that you're doing constantly. And I'm going to say, okay, route path equals login, element equals login. Okay, got that in. Now I'm just going to check login. And it shows. That's a positive confirmation that everything I've done up to this point works. Now, I want the login button as well. So where do I kind of want that? This is large. I kind of want this underneath, maybe. It's not going to be pretty yet, right? Button, login. And what we're going to do here is, oh, you know what? The issue for this, though, is if I have the button in here, I want to actually, there's a method for the React router called route or like navigate or something like that. But you can only do it if you're already inside the route. So let's do this. Let's make a header component, okay? And then we're going to put this in a header component. Because if I do a header component, then it will actually be inside of this router, and then I can route inside the router. So we're going to make a new directory, components, header, JSX, export default function, header, return. I'm going to make it a fragment that actually returns this because I don't want to have an actual structure around it. Header is not defined. Right. That's what happens when I typed in the app before I actually created it. If I put it in now, it gives me this option here, and you might see me just hit enter on that. That's because that's the auto. If it looks like it's the correct place, it auto imports, which is really helpful for components. And there we go. Now I've got my header, my button. I want to go in here, and I want to say, okay, onClick equals, oops. And now is when we need use, I forget what it is, React router DOM, use navigate. This is a hook that will let you just navigate. So I can say onClick equals navigate to /login. Now when I click on this, oops, require not defined. Oh, right. Because I'm here, I have to use imports. This is front-end code. Okay, if I log in, you can see it immediately takes me to the login page. Pretty cool. Indicates a memory leak. Wow, okay. Oh, because there's, you know why? There's probably a use effect still going on in home. This use effect happens. Use effect always happens the first time. So let's say if temp tags equals empty return, or we'll just say set resources to empty. We don't even need to bother to search for that. Okay. Tags, login. There we go. Now that goes away. So, login. Now we can say, okay, you know, header and start of login page. See, I've gotten the 7 files. I kind of want to get that pushed. Let's take a look at our login. What are we going to want here? We're going to want a form. Okay, and then we're going to want a couple of fields. Label for equals username, oops, input type equals text, value equals blank on change, oops, blank, ID equals username, so the label hooks up correctly. We're going to need actually a use state. Equals use state. And again, you notice the first thing that comes up is that React. I hit enter and it just auto imports it. Pretty nifty. Username on change. Set username target.value. If I have to do too many more of these, I'll probably actually make a component just for them. Password. Set password. And then we want a button. Login. We don't need an onClick handler for this because it's inside a form. Instead, I'm going to put an onSubmit. Prevent default. And, oh, you know what? We need the password in here. Password and set password. Either prevent default. We are going to say, okay, we need our call API. All right, so what did I call that in home? Let's call it call API. We're going to grab that here as well because I want to be able to do the same thing. And here we're going to call API. This is a post. It is API user login, or users, I think we called it. Our data is going to be username, password, then result. We don't actually care what the result is in this case. The main thing we want to do if it's a result is we actually want to kind of travel back to the home page. So we also want our use navigate from React. Const. From React router DOM navigate equals use navigate. Not at all what I want. And then we're going to navigate to the slash. In case there's an error. If there's an error, then, you know, we want to do something else. All right, let's try this out. Oh, on invalid property 4 at label. You know what? Let's look this up. React label 4. The 4 attribute on the label in React. Oh, you need to use HTML4. Okay, so pretty much what they suggested, but sometimes what they suggest is not the best, so. All right, so let's just pop that in there and in there. Make sure that goes away. Okay, admin. Here's our password. We click login, and our network, ooh, it's pending. That's interesting. Something must have happened on the back end. Well, let's see. Let's take a look. Oh, you know what? We created the token and we never did anything with it. We never ended the request. So we actually have to send this as a cookie. I think it's set cookie. Let's just see. Express set cookie. Stack Overflow is great for this stuff. Oh, it's just cookie. Res.cookie. Okay. Res.cookie. Session token and then res.stats200.end. Actually, because the system expects JSON, so I want to give it some JSON. Okay, look here, login. Okay, we got payload headers, and if you look at our response headers, we have a set cookie. And that is our JWT key. Perfect, because that gets set automatically in our cookies and should be sent down with every other request we make. So if I make another request, it didn't set it. I wonder why not. Oh, you know why? This is where things get hairy, at least in this particular thing. When I'm sending the API, I'm not sending it with the right options. So I also need to say credentials include. Because that is the only way it deals with the cookies and actually handles them appropriately. Oops. Oh, this should be a password field. I'm realizing I shouldn't be able to see that. So let's just fix that really quick. Change that to a password. Okay. Log in. Oh, now we're getting cores. That's fun. It says, hey, no. No. You've got a wildcard. Okay. That I don't like. I don't like your wildcard here. I'm unhappy with this. So that's because whenever you're doing credentials, it gets very suspicious and starts saying, okay, well, if I'm sending passwords or if I'm sending tokens here, cookies, your server needs to be set up in the right way. Now I'm using cores here, but you can see it can't be very permissive. I am actually doing very permissive cores. Access control, allow origin, anything. Browser says, no, we're not comfortable with that at this point. You can't just allow anything to give you that cookie. So we could just not use the cookie, but that's not the ideal thing to do. Instead, what you really want to do when you're doing development in a situation like this is you want to proxy your request. So notice right now, I have this whole thing in here that's saying, oh, you know, if we're in localhost, go to 9090. And otherwise, go to the origin. Because normally in the origin, both your server and your front end are running on the same server, so you're not really having to deal with this issue. Or they at least have the same domain. Or hopefully they do. Same subdomain. Or if they aren't, they're set enough so that you can make them work. What we want to do is we want to proxy. So I can tell, you can do this in Webpack, and I'm sure you can do it in Vite as well, but you can tell it, hey, any request you get that you don't understand, send it somewhere else. And the reason that is, let me show you. If I take all this out, tell it to always go to the origin, okay? Let me show you what happens. Close this, login. It says, you wanted API users login, but I don't know what that is because this is Vite. Vite says, yeah, I don't know what that is, dude. So let's look up Vite proxy. How to configure the proxy in Vite. Okay. We don't look at this code. It gives us something, but this is wrong because the user said it didn't work. So let's look at here. Specify secure flag. Oh, they answered their own question. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to go to my vconfig. I'm going to paste that in there. While I'm at it, I actually kind of want to, I'll pull this in. This is secure false, change origin true. This is localhost 9090. Okay, so now everything from API, it should send there. I have to restart Vite to do that because I changed its config. Now let's take a look at that. Let's see what happens. Go here. Okay, log in. Change me. Log in. Ooh, it still get that 404. It's not working too well with that, is it? Doesn't seem like it wants to proxy. Okay, really good have issues. Secure false. This person's okay. They've got their target, change order, etc. Rewrite. Event listeners. Okay, so this API is target. Okay, we got change order true, secure false. Nah. It actually redirects to that for API instead of redirecting. I mean, that's kind of what I want, right? Oh, you know what it might be? I wonder if it's because... Oh, it's because HTTPS. That doesn't exist, right? I'm running this locally. So I'm not running this on the HTTPS server. I'm running on a HTTP server. Let's try that. In. No, it's trying to go here. Okay. And it's hitting, oh, now you see if I get, it's hitting this path, which is not what I want. Target, actually, just like that, I was successful. Well, let's look at their actual documentation here. Proxy. Okay, configures custom proxy rules. So here's our proxy. Food goes to there, API, target, Jordan. Rewrite path. Oh, that's interesting. So that oh, they have to, that might be why. Because they've got regex in here. I might need to set some regex. So let's do this. Star, or do I actually need, oh, I need true regex. Okay. This is what's called a globbing path. And this is like kind of literally everything. So I'm wondering if that might work. Let's try it. Actually, let's see. Do they have using the proxy instance configure proxy? Doesn't say if they can do globbing, but let's try it. Config. It's always something, right? Okay, still 404. All right, well then I'm gonna give up on this for now. What I'm gonna do instead, let's come back in here, is I'm actually just gonna go in and tell my cores to accept this domain because this domain needs to be in the allow list. So let's look up how to do that. What package did I use for that? Let's use cores. Okay. Cores allow domain. Allow multiple cores domains. Okay, so cores origin. Cool. So let's do this. And that should tell it permit this origin. Of course, that, okay, that should restart that. And let's just see what we get now. Log in. Oh, I'm still getting cores. What are you getting now? Okay. No access control origin header is present. Responsive proof checked is present on the requested resource. So what is on the requested resource? My request headers and my response headers show up as what? Okay, so it's headers and methods, but not the origin. So somehow this isn't working. Let's see. Cores, yeah, I mean that. This person, this is special. Yes, of course, we're using the cores module. Okay, so cores, there's cores there. Cores options, origin. That looks like that should work, right? That's exactly, well, yeah. If I do it here, like that, maybe, without the trailing. And I'm just going to restart this. It should be restarting, but I don't know if I trust it. Okay, still cores. It's just saying it's not there at all. Well, request essentials mode, CORS header response is blank. Oh, allow credentials. Request access control, allow credentials header. Okay, credentials. Set true to pass the header. Okay. So we're going to go in here, true. Okay, see, every little bug, we get a little further. Okay, let's see. What do we get if we try it now? Oops. Okay, well that seemed to work. Did it set the cookie though? Application, it did. There's our cookie. All right, so we went a little bit down a rabbit hole there, but you can see this is kind of how you need to get around security. So I'm going to save this as CORS done and login. Great. Now it'd be great to know if we are logged in. For that, I'm going to use a context because I might need to know this information in multiple places. And I'm going to call it the user context. Okay. From React, I do need to import React here because I'm going to use react.createContext. Contexts are basically just a store of data. They're kind of useful in a lot of regards for this. And then we're going to export default user context. No, goodness, not like that. Context, not an Emmet abbreviation. Export function user provider. This is the way that I've always done this. You can do your providers and such differently if you want to. I just find it very convenient. Return user context.provider equals value. The value is the thing that is accessible to all the children. And then I'm going to come down here, say, okay, user context, provider. Put the app inside that so that everything inside the app has access. Now, I want to log in. And equals use state false. Okay, and we're going to pass that down to the system. Pretty important stuff. Use state. Now, I want a function check login. And what I'm going to do here, because this is not an HTTPS, or this is not an HTML only cookie, the JavaScript can access it. I don't see that as big of a security threat as some people do. I feel like if you're already logged into the system, someone who has access to your browser to the point where they can put JavaScript, random JavaScript on it, is already probably able to listen to your network requests and get this token. That might not be the case. But yeah, I'm generally not too worried about this being read. If this is read, then you could also set this manually, like the set logged in, and do it some other way, but this is kind of the best way I've found. So what I'm going to do, cookie string equals document.cookie, which is a standard string, okay? So let me show you what this is, cookie string, and what we're going to do, we're going to use effect to call check login on component mounting, which only happens once. This is a whole string, right? And it might be separated by semicolons. So cookie pairs equals cookie string dot split by semicolon. And then what I want to do is I want to turn into an object. Cookie object equals cookie pairs dot reduce. Reduce is perfect for this. Const key value equals pair dot split on the equal sign, because you can see on the equal sign, oops, I guess it went away, but on the equal sign is how they do it. Cookie object key dot trim equals value dot trim. And actually this is going to be, I need to do this better because we're doing this in a reduce. So that, oops, not equals, should give us an object containing all of our cookies. Cookie object. Okay, so we split our cookie to get there, then we split each pair by the equal sign, and now we have a nice little object. Kind of a useful thing. There's modules that'll do this, but it's not that complicated. So now I say if if we have a session key, set logged in to true. Otherwise, set logged in to false. Pretty simple. We're not actually checking if it's a valid session. We're just checking if it exists. We're letting other systems deal with that. So, check login. It runs. It does its thing. Now, why is this important? Well, let's say I'm in here. I am logged in. I should probably not show the login button. So what I want to do is I want to go to my components, header, logged in equals use context. And this is going to be the user context. And I'm going to say not logged in and our button. So now when I'm logged in, no more button. Easy. If I am logged in though, I want to see some other stuff here. Okay. I want to go to my home page, and if I am logged in, I want to see a button to add a new entry into the system. Okay, so let's do here. We've got our label, our tags. I kind of want to wrap these in something. Let's wrap them in a span. There. Also, this is a little off, so I'm just going to put a space there. A single space doesn't get ignored. Multiple do. So if I put like a bunch of spaces, it'll only do the first one, but a single space is usually good. All right, so let's put another button. Let's say, okay, first of all, logged in equals use context, user context. Same thing, right? We now know, I'll use callback, use context. We now know if the user's logged in and that information is spread everywhere in our program. So I can come in here, I could say logged in and button. Oops. And I'm just going to put a big plus here. Let me see, what's a good plus? HTML entity for big plus. Heavy plus sign. That'll work. Heavy plus sign, there's the HTML entity. So we're going to grab that. Any Unicode you can put in, so any of these cool things, just pop that in there. And there we go. There's our heavy plus. Kind of want that to be on the other side of the tag, so let's actually make this a display flex justify content space between. Okay, now it's over there. This only shows up if I'm logged in. If I go in here to my application, I delete that cookie. Oh god, it crashes. The reason it's crashing now is the user context is getting an empty split because the cookie is an empty string, and even if you split something and it doesn't have that in it, it's just an empty string. So what I'm going to say is if pair equals blank, return object. Don't bother to process it. Now I've got our login, change me. Oh, non-unique ID username. You should always fix these little errors as they come up if you know what they mean. That is because this is password. I used the username ID twice. And now that should fix that. Login. Ah, so we have our session, right? And if I reloaded, it'd be there, but it's not there right now. As soon as I log in, what I want it to do is as soon as I log in, I actually want it to recalculate. And that's why I've got check login. I can actually pass that from the context. And then inside login, I can actually pull it in, context, user context, and then I can check login. Now, let's check that out. So I really should do a logout button, huh? Admin, change me. I also want to get rid of this button when this is here, but that's okay. Login, and now you can see it runs that check and gets that immediately, which is useful. What's this button? I want it to go to another page, okay? Add resource, JSX. function add export default. Function add resource. And again, all I'm going to say, resource. Just put that in for now. Let's set up our route. Okay. Actually, yeah, we're fine for now. Let's say we could commit at this point, but we can go a little bit further. Put in a route. Path equals add. Element equals add resource. That's in there. Now, inside my header, whenever I click on that plus button, oops, that's not in the header, is it? That's on the home. Whenever I click on this plus button, I want to navigate. I don't have navigate in here. Well, let's add it in. Import, use navigate. React, router DOM, navigate equals use navigate. Navigate to add. Okay. Now we're here, plus add resource. Now we commit, okay? Let's go in here, user context, login handling, add resource, start. Basically everything I just did. Now in add resource, here's the thing. I'm in add. I'm still in add. I shouldn't get to this page if I'm not logged in. You know? I don't want that. I don't want to be getting there. So, what do we do about that? Well, there's a couple things we can do. One of them is we could actually have a component called the authenticated route. And all this does, I'll show you what it does, is this just verifies that you're authenticated. It's kind of like your auth handle on the back end, but this is for the front end. Children. So now we want to actually pull in our logged in equals require, or actually not require, it equals use context, user context. You might notice I separate these. That's because any internal exports I like to keep separate from the external ones just because it's a little cleaner. Not logged in. Then what we're going to do, okay, we want to pull in our import, use navigate from React router DOM, and we're going to say navigate equals use navigate. If we're not logged in, we're just going to navigate to the login. And then return null, which we can do out of a React component. Otherwise, return the children. So now, when I come here, I actually put add resource. I can wrap it in an authenticated route. And if I try to go here again, oh, it's broken. You should call navigate and React use effect not when your component is first run. I mean, that's fair. Okay, fine. Let's do use effect. And then we'll call navigate in here. If not logged in, then we navigate. So that's okay. We can work with that. So if I go to add now, it immediately takes me to login again. This is now an authenticated route. I can't get there. So let's go here. Okay. If I reload though, even though I'm logged in, it immediately takes me to here. Why is that? Well, this is the thing about React that's a little tricky. Okay, on the very first run, the very first time it runs, we get our, where is it? This use effect here that checks login. This happens after the first render. So this use effect is happening, and this use effect is happening roughly at the same time, which means logged in is not set yet. I remember I set it to, oh God, I'm losing where I am. I set it to false by default. So the system spins up and it says, oh, while you're checking to see if the user's logged in, I'm just going to go and take the previous value you had here and run with it. Not what we want. There's a way around this, and it's a loading state. So the loading state in here, I'm going to say, okay, as soon as I set this, set loading equals false. Oops. That way, I can actually check this state to see if we're still in the process of checking if the user is ready to go. Even though the user is going to be ready to go a millisecond after, I can still use this to determine that. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to say, okay, well, let me take a look at loading also. So if we're not logged in and we're not loading, okay? And also, if we're logged in or we're loading, don't show the page. So now I go here, I go add, and it leaves me on add resource because loading is false. And it's saying, okay, logged in is not true, but we're still loading, so I'm not going to navigate. Then as soon as loading switches and logged in switch at the same time, it says, oh, well now logged in is true. I don't care if loading is false. So this is a good way if you need to, for stuff in your page to wait for various things to figure out. And even though this is synchronous, that's just the way React works. It still is going to happen one slightly after out of band with the rest of the system. So it's technically, it is synchronous, but React doesn't treat it that way. All right, so let's add this in here. Auth route. All right, add resource. Cool, we're adding the resource. Let's check it out. Go into our add resource in views. We want another form. Okay, not auth, add resource. So I want another. Pop a div in there, form. That. Okay, first thing we need, what are the various fields that we're going to need for our resources? Title, description, link, and tags. Okay, so we'll add in a label for HTML, or HTML4 equals title. Okay, we'll add our input. Text value equals blank, on change equals blank, ID equals title. So make sure title. All right, we'll come in here, title and set title, use state blank. This is going to be title, and this is going to be set title, target.value, and now we just duplicate this. This is, we want description and link, link and tags. Description, link, tags separated by comma. Now we change this, description, link, tags. Well, let's copy these a couple times too. Description, link, tags, set description. A lot of copy paste. Did I spell that right? I did not. Description, set link, set tags, and yes, you can go away. Description, link, tags, set description, set link, set tags. Whew. All right, there we go. It still doesn't look very good, but that's okay. Button. Oops. Create. Just like before, we're going to add an onSubmit. Prevent default. Body. I'm going to set up the body. Description, link, tags. Now, what I'm actually going to do here is I want to send the tags as JSON. I'm going to split them by the comma. Because we're already sending this as JSON, it's totally fine. It's just the database system we're using already knows how to handle JSON. So if I give it an array, it's totally fine with that. Okay, we got to import our call API. From API, we're going to say, okay, call API, post. This is going to be API resources, and then body. Result. And what I'm going to do, set title to blank. If you're successful, which I haven't actually checked to be fair, set description, set link, set tags. You set them all to blank, and that blanks them out, which is actually going to be a pain in the ass for testing. So I'm going to turn it off for now, but just to keep in mind, that's a thing that you want to do. You want to have all these things. As soon as the user does that creation flow, you empty the form just because that looks nice for them. All right. Test thing link tag ABC. Great. Post not found. Completely fair, we haven't created it yet. So let's go in here. We're just going to say add resource front end. Now we're going to go back to the back end, our resources and our models, sorry, our routes. Router.post slash async request response. Get our title, description, link, and tags, body. What I want to do is I could check to see if any of these are empty. So what that would look like if title equals blank, res.status 400 dot error title is blank. I could also say if not title or title is blank. I'm not going to do that for all of these, but you can kind of see as an example of how you would do this. Then, okay, we're going to say new resource equals await resources model dot insert title, description, link, tags. Why don't I just pass the body? Because there might be other things in the body. Maybe someone's forced in the ID, and that could screw things up. I don't want that. And then I'm going to say res.status 200.json new resource. I don't actually remember what resource model.insert returns. Might just return the ID. Let's find out. Test tag 1 AB. Great. Okay. That seems to have worked. Oh, it just gave me the ID back. Okay. Well, then I can check my data. I can see there's my new resource. And I'm noticing there's not actually a button to go back to home. That's not good. We should probably add that in. But anyway, if I put an A as a tag, there's my new resource with my link that, of course, doesn't exist. So let's put this in here. Post resources. There's a bunch of other things I could do on this site. From here, I'd like to be able to go back to the home. Maybe some better error handling, saying like, hey, yes, you created it, rather than just nothing. Though having these go blank is kind of a nice one. The ability to modify resources, the ability to edit resources, delete them, mark them inactive, allow people to submit their own. That could be a thing, and then hold them for pending. Allow people to create their own accounts and be able to like save their favorites, things like that. But this is a pretty good start. You know, I'm pretty happy with this. So yeah, I think that'll be all for now. Hope this is interesting. I'll see y'all next time.